Okay, for week 4 on refugees and immigrants, this was a really kind of eclectic reflection on the different perspectives and experiences that people have when immigrating. The topic of microaggressions I thought was really interesting to learn about the different stages in which people who are entering into a new culture and a new society and the stages of adaptation. It seems that there's like this breaking point where if they feel accepted, or if they're able to identify with the group that they're being categorized into, then there is a process of acceptance and acclimation. However, if there's not, then there's an isolation process that happens where communities form just to stick within their safe group. And so listening to the videos of how I thought it was really interesting that some of the assumptions that people in society and the public make about ethnicity and race towards others can be really skewed. And this, in turn, becomes offensive more historically than just based on physical appearance. So some of the examples in these interviews where it talks about like integrate and not assimilate, as well as these like students on microaggression and how like someone who falls into a Spanish category or a Mexican category, they aren't necessarily that person. I don't like saying they. I feel like that's a separating word. So everybody has historical history with their ancestors and with our generational lineage. And so I can personally relate to how like my grandmother was an immigrant to the US, and then how the generation of my mother shifted to adapt here. So language changed, goals changed. It also was very influenced by the time. So women were progressing at the same time as my mom, coming from a different cultural background. So she had two intersectional characteristic qualities there. In these videos, they talk about how like this person is maybe Puerto Rican, but they are assumed to be in the African American category. So this sort of like offense and disrespect to the history that goes in between countries, even though there might be Spanish connections or Hispanic connections, that there's actually a history where people don't necessarily even have a positive relationship with each other, yet we shove all of that into one category. And reflecting on that in just my awareness outside of the course content is that like European or Caucasian is a very broad spectrum. However, we are able to say American, English, British, Australian, Canadian, and there's a lot of differentiation within that specific context. However, we don't do that for other groups, and these kids are speaking out on that, which I think is very brave and very accurate. And then this idea of like what happens to generations similar to my mom and my generation, of what is able to survive through the assimilation process, and when generations have to acclimate to having a culture at home and then having a culture when they go to school, or a culture when they're with their friends versus like their family, and how this becomes an adaptation process where it changes generationally. And we are looking at some cultures that get lost in that process, where people become completely integrated into the new society that they're in.